joining us today. I'm Dawn LeBeau, and I'm the Program Officer with Akiptan. We're a Native CDFI located on the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation in South Dakota, and we serve those in the Native agriculture industry nationwide. And today we have with us Stephanie Cote from Oweesta, and we are doing the best practices for building your personal credit webinar. And we will be recording the webinar today, so that way you can access it on our webinar library on our website. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Stephanie and then do some I'll do housekeeping first. Everyone is welcome to ask questions in the chat box. If you want to unmute and ask the question, that's fine too. Just raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you can ask the question. We do ask that you remain on mute in the meantime. But let me go ahead and introduce Stephanie. Okay, so Stephanie is currently the Senior Programs Officer in Financial Education and Asset Building Officer at Oweesta Corporation. She has been with Oweesta Corp since January of 2012, previously as the Communications Manager, Office and Administrative Manager, and an independent consultant. During this time, Ms. Cote has gained significant knowledge of the Native Community Development Financial Institution industry. In her career history, Ms. Cote worked with First Nations Development Institute, I might be saying this wrong, but Cielo Foundation, Native CDFI Network, Potluck Fund, Longhouse Media, and Northwest Native Development Fund. She is a master trainer for the Building Native Communities suite of curriculum, a certified HUD housing counselor, Credit as an Asset master trainer, Credit Smart curriculum instructor, NeighborWorks America and CHEC certified in homeownership counseling, and is a certified professional coach through the Coach for Transformation program with Leadership That Works. Ms. Cote currently serves as a member on the Clearinghouse CDFI Native American Advisory Board and the State of Colorado's Office of Financial Empowerment Advisory Board. In her spare time, she's a fitness instructor, facilitating a range of fitness mediums from weightlifting and cardio to yoga and meditation. Ms. Cote attained her BA in comparative literature in French and English with a minor in Native American studies from the University of Michigan. She is Potawatomi and Odawa of Michigan from the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Stephanie for the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Dawn. That's a long bio there. My apologies. Well, now you know a lot about me. Ani, Stephanie Cote, Indigenous, Grand Traverse Band, Odawa, and Wachapwa, and Nimidagos. Hello, my name is Stephanie Cote, and as Dawn had mentioned, I'm from the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians out in Michigan. And it's my pleasure today to, as Dawn had mentioned, we're talking about personal credit. And she had also mentioned that I'm a certified trainer of the Credit as an Asset curriculum by Credit Builders Alliance. Today, I thought what was best fitting for what we had discussed was I went through the Credit Building 101 slides and I'm like, this is like everything personal credit. So as she'd mentioned, feel free to type in the chat, type in Q&A, ask questions as the presentation goes along. I will be honest, normally it is a 3 to 4 hour training, but we're going to do it in a lunch hour. So it'll be quite fast and furious. If you have any questions after, feel free to reach out. You can reach me at stephanie@oweesta.org. And yeah, well, let's dive on in. So what's the word that comes to mind when you think about credit? Take just a moment to think. What word pops up when we think about credit? So thinking of this and holding it, we just want to recognize that everyone has a different credit journey. We're all coming into credit at a different point in our lives. And sometimes it looks varied across the board. As you can see, everyone has numbers on that picture on the screen. So we want to recognize that we have different points of access available to us, depending on our location and our experience, education. And we want to acknowledge that sometimes this is a difficult topic to discuss. But today we're going to focus on credit reports and credit scores. So as you see on the screen, everyone's got like their own personalized little number there. And we've got Mr. Unscored here in the center. When we think about credit, we want to know where's the root of this term. So credit comes from the Latin word credo, which means trust. So using credit as a tool, its core meaning is to build trust. Credit in the English language is a noun, and it means value or worth and what we've placed on it. And then as we see down at the bottom there, debt, D-E-T-T-E, means the sum of money that's owed. Or as we would spell it, D-E-B-T, debt, or something that's owed. So credit building is a critical strategy for achieving a good credit profile. And when credit building is not acquired, when it's not about acquiring debt, it does require using credit. So we'll use credit maybe when we purchase a house, because that's a large sum of money that we're not going to have access to generally. So we put it on credit, not a credit card, obviously, but credit as in we'd owe someone the money that we're borrowing. So why credit building? Here, we want to gain access, pay less, and improve our options. In doing so, we have access to a myriad of options. So that might be these financial products. And here you're joining us with Akiptan. They have a lot of products available for your agricultural needs. You might utilize it for rental housing. They might check. A few places I know have checked my credit when I'm attaining rental housing. Utilities will check your credit. If you're accessing that cell phone plan, insurance products, you might get the insurance, but you'll have a lower rate if you have good credit. Asset and wealth building in the long run, you'll utilize the credit system in order to gain that. And then sometimes employment, especially if you're working in a bank or financial institution, they will check your credit. So this is why it's important to start out with your personal credit and build it over time. In here, good help, credit will also help in those cases of emergencies. So sometimes maybe we hit inclement weather, or maybe we have a job loss and we have to revert to our emergency savings. Sometimes our emergency savings will be depleted, and then we'll have to use credit, lean into the credit system to float us through those times. It could also help us reduce our expenses and, of course, always achieve goals. So as you see on the screen, you want to build credit, save money, have that financial stability, and then ultimately financial security. So we're going to think about credit and our goals. And just for a moment, think about, how has credit impacted your life? Taking a moment to think about it, whether positively, negatively. We have a spectrum of experiences with credit. In this presentation, we're going to think about credit as an asset, as opposed to credit as a deficit. So how can we utilize credit to positively impact our lives. Lots of slides. When we're thinking about goals and how we might implement credit into them, we want to think of them, and you've probably heard this term before, but you want your goals to be SMART. This will help you in attaining them in the long run. So how SMART defined? It's an acronym for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-based. So you want to be as specific as you can with your short and long-term goals. You want it to be measurable. So what are you going to, maybe that's, I want to buy a car. What type of car? Be as specific as possible. What are your needs and what budget do you have? You want it to be actionable. So what steps are you going to take? And realistic, is it a realistic time frame? And then time-based, is it a realistic amount of money? And then time-based is where you're thinking about the timeline. So by when am I going to achieve this short-term goal or long-term goal? And with the example of a car, when am I going to attain that car? And how much am I going to put into it? What are the steps I'm going to take to achieve that goal? Credit basics. Here, we want to think about our credit history. There's 3 different things we're going to talk about. The credit history or file, which is how you've used credit in the past, is your whole file. Think of it as your grade book with all of your assignments ever that you've done recorded in it. This will be your entire credit history. A credit report is just going to be like a report card. So it's not every assignment that you've done. It's just a snapshot in time. 7 to 10 years will be your credit report. So it's not going to show everything in your entire life. It's just that 7 to 10 year time frame. A credit score is going to be like your GPA. So this is just a 3-digit number that's going to summarize how good a risk you are at this point in time. The credit score is an algorithm. We'll talk about that in the next few slides, but it's derived from your credit report. So it's just looking at that snapshot. So if you're thinking to yourself, I had a bankruptcy, my credit's shot for my whole life, it actually falls off the credit report after 7 to 10 years, depending on the type of bankruptcy. And your credit score is not harmed forever as well. It falls off because the algorithms utilize your credit report. So in terms of credit products, like I said, fast and furious, there are different types of loans or different types of credit products you can utilize to positively influence your credit. The types are going to be installment credit. This is going to be a loan, and it's a fixed amount of terms, and it comes in a lump sum disbursement. So on the screen, you can see here, they'll pay, the loan begins, all of the funds are dispersed, and then over time, you're going to chip away at it. So examples of these are going to be student loans, car loans, mortgages, where you have a set amount that's given to you. And then over time, you're just going to make those incremental payments toward the payoff. While paying off debt's a good thing, once the loan is paid in full, it's no longer active on your credit report and will not continue to help you build credit. Eventually, established credit score could disappear if you don't have active credit. The next we're going to discuss is this revolving credit. So unlike the installment, it's not a lump sum and then you pay back that credit over time. Revolving credit is going to be an open-ended amount. It's going to be that credit card. So you have the set amount that you can borrow up to, and then you pay back over time. With this, an example is going to be maybe if someone owes $1,000 on a credit card, their monthly payment is going to be around 3% of the balance. So in this case, it'd be about $30. And the next month, if they owed $1,500 on the credit card, the minimum again would be 3%, and you'd pay $45. So something to keep in mind that you want to pay more than the minimum, one, because it's only 3% and it's not going to significantly affect the amount that you've taken out. So $45 compared to $1,500 is, that's how people get stuck in the cycle of debt, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Good credit will happen if you, here are some points that you'll want to remember if you're just starting out establishing credit or trying to rebuild your credit. Open and use at least one credit product, so whether it be a credit card or a loan. You can use a credit card, but make sure that you keep your balances low. This is called credit utilization. And then 3 is to pay your creditors on time or within at least 30 days of that due date. There is a leniency. So if you are coming up on the edge of your month, you know you're not able to make that payment, just know that you do have a 30-day grace period. You will have penalties and fees. However, it will not go on your credit report. But once you've hit that 30 days past due, then you are delinquent on that account. So again, you want at least one active form of credit on your credit report. You want to keep that utilization low. So if I have a credit card that I have active on my credit report and my balances, or I have available to me $1,000, the recommendation is to only use 100 of those 1,000 or less, 10% or less of utilization for a prime credit score. And then finally, again, stressing, in order to maintain that good credit, you have to pay on time or within the 30 days after you've been late. A little bit want to highlight here that the 3 reporting agencies are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So these are the businesses that, or your businesses compile, that are going to compile information to reports that will be utilized by other lenders. So if you're opening out your credit card, you're taking out a loan, most likely those lenders are going to pull your credit report from Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion. And I believe it's in another slide, but in case it's not, fun fact, the only federally recognized place to receive your credit report is from annualcreditreport.com. And I'm placing that in the chat. I thought it was a scam at first. I'm like, that seems like a scammy site, but it's actually the only place you can get free credit reports. Through now with the pandemic, through December 2023, you can access your credit reports for free from annualcreditreport.com from all 3 bureaus weekly. So that's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So if you have not done so in a long time, I implore you today, go pull your credit report and check it out. And we'll talk about credit reporting errors a little later. So Other key players that are going to be pulling those credit reports, we already talked about businesses and lenders. On the earlier slide, we talked about different companies that will be pulling as well. So for your utilities, cell phone bills, other players are that there are companies that build credit scores. So we'll talk about credit scores a little later. All these slides build upon each other. But there are a lot of companies that are going to be pulling your credit reports to create credit scores, such as FICO and Vantage. There are hundreds of scoring models. Government agencies that enforce laws around credit reporting also pull your credit reports. And of course, you have access to your credit report for free at annualcreditreport.com, and it's coined annualcreditreport.com. Pre-pandemic, you are only allowed to pull one credit report from each of the 3 bureaus each year. Okay, enough Stephanie talking. Let's get on to a quick round of Jeopardy. So here we're going to test our knowledge, and then we're going to answer some, we'll test our knowledge and then we'll dive deeper into each of these points. So myth or fact, feel free to type it in the chat, but I'm going to go through these pretty fast. If you pay all your bills on time, you'll have a high credit score. Myth or fact, think about that. Pay all your bills on time, you'll have a high credit score. Oop. Myth. Okay. Paying regular bills on time is great, but it won't build credit unless the payments are reported to one of the 3 credit bureaus. So if you're paying on time to that utility bill, it's not going to touch your credit, even though they pulled your credit report to see if you're good on your payments. They typically do not report to the 3 credit bureaus. If you only have collection accounts on your credit report, you may not have a score. If you only have credit reports, you might not have a score. This is a fact. In order to have a score, a consumer must have active trade lines, and collections accounts are not active. So that means they've gone to a third party to collect on that payment, and it's not going to positively impact, there's not an active trade line anymore. You can ruin your credit by applying for a few lines of credit and making inquiries, or known as making inquiries. You can ruin your credit by opening, the key word here is a few. That's a myth. So applying for new credit does affect your credit score, but only by about 10%. So if it's a few that you're opening, it's not going to completely demolish your credit. And it's possible to go from having a score, or to not having a score, to having a good score in only 6 months if you have one loan and pay that loan on time each month. So it's possible to go from 0 to a good score in 6 months with just one loan product. This is a fact. So they've found that if you are credit invisible or establishing new credit in only 6 months with positive payments and one active trade line, you can go to a prime or near prime score. And finally, a single late payment can reduce your credit score by 100 points. Myth or fact? 100 points. Fact. So if you join us for credit as an asset, Oweesta has one coming up in May. It's a 3-day training, but we dive a little bit more into how each of these things can affect your credit score, each of the possible impacts to your credit score and how long they stay on your credit. If you have super prime credit, so like 750 and above, and you default on a loan or you go delinquent, that takes you down 100 points. So like one late payment can knock you down 100 points. They don't kick you down when you're low though. So, or they don't kick you while you're down. So if you have a credit score around like 600, the impact is only about 75 if you're late on one payment. Also, the duration of how long it affects your credit isn't very long, only about 6 months to 1 year. Okay, round 2. How many credit scores can one individual have? Is it 1 credit score, 3, 1 from each bureau, no more than 20, or too many to count? So here it's going to be too many to count. There are lots of companies out there pulling your credit report, like I'd mentioned earlier, and they're creating these algorithms to create credit scores. So there are hundreds of credit scores out there. But there are a few top ones. So like I'd mentioned, FICO is a big one, and Vantage. Those are kind of the top 2, but within each of those companies, they have several scores. So you have the FICO for auto, FICO for home, and there are a few different variations or algorithms that they have for each of those. And then you have the consumer loan, and so lots and lots of credit scores. And last but not least, what are the 5 principal factors that influence a credit score? Oh, I have 2 more questions. We'll talk about this a little bit later. And thank you, Dawn, for dropping in our upcoming trainings. 5 factors that influence your credit score, and this is true across most of the credit scoring models. You're going to see payment history. That's why we emphasize make those payments on time. The amount owed. So that's going to be how much you're utilizing of that revolving credit. The length of credit history, how long you've had that credit established, how long your credit, if it's a credit card, how long that's been open. Any new credit, this is going to be that inquiries. So how many times you've opened new lines of credit. And then credit mix. They want to see if you're good with that installment loan type and revolving types. Okay. And last one, which is the strongest influence on your credit score? I've already said it a few times, but it's going to be that payment history. You want to make sure that you're making those payments on time, because that's going to impact your credit score the most. Okay, now on to credit reports, because this is the biggest tool utilized to build your credit. What is on the credit report? We have personal identifying information. This is going to be things like your social security number, birth date, previous addresses, and possibly your employers. You'll want to make sure that all of these, you'll want to make sure that you always use your full legal name when applying for credit, because it's reported to the credit bureaus and it could show up different, or it could show up as an error on your credit report. Credit history. This includes any lenders that you've done business with, including types of credit accounts, payments, outstanding balances, the credit limit, the date the account opened, and the current status. So that'll show you whether you're on time or late. Next, we have the public records. So here is where those bankruptcies are going to show up. This is where I was like, why were they not a little more intuitive? So Chapter 13 bankruptcies are on your credit report for 7 years. This type of bankruptcy is where they, we'll get into that a little bit later, but they restructure your debt. Chapter 7, on the other hand, is where they liquidate everything and write off some of your loans. This type of bankruptcy is going to remain on your credit report for 10 years. So just know a restructuring will fall off. Chapter 13 is 7 years. Chapter 7 is 10 years. I would have thought the 7 and 7 would go together, but they don't. But just know that on the public records, they're becoming more limited due to changing in the industries. Civil judgments and tax liens will no longer appear on your credit report. It's important to note that these debts don't appear on the credit report. Even though they don't appear on the credit report, you still have to pay them. And if you have those on your credit report, you should dispute them. Lastly, inquiries. These show up on your credit report, and it shows when lenders, employers, and other parties have requested your credit report in the last 2 years. So it'll show up if it's been accessed. So you have hard inquiries will be on there for 2 years. Soft inquiries will fall off at about 6 months. So soft inquiries are going to be something like those promotional materials. You might get them in the mail, credit card offers. They do do a soft pull of your credit report to create those. So if you have hundreds, like I checked mine the other day, and it was like hundreds of soft pulls, those don't affect your credit score and they fall off in 6 months. Let's talk a little bit about what's not on the credit report. So non-banking information. So they will not, non-credit banking information. So they don't pull information about your checking account or savings account. So if you just put all of your information or you don't pull credit, you're like, I have to have cash or it's in the checking and savings account. They don't pull this information, so it's not going to show up on your credit report. Beliefs and affiliations that will not show gender, ethnicity, religion, and political affiliation. Many non-delinquent accounts, so utilities, anything that you might be paying off on a monthly basis, like a cell phone, that are non-traditional forms of credit won't show up on that account unless they're reporting to the credit bureaus. And then they might show up on your account if you default and it goes to collections. Collections accounts show up on your credit report. And finally, old accounts that no longer show up on your credit report as of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So like I said, bankruptcies are going to be the longest thing or a longer thing on your credit report. The chapter 13 at 7 years, chapter 7 at 10 years. Another thing to note is that if you have an account that's been closed, but it was positive, it will stay on your credit report for 10 years. So I wouldn't freak out if you're looking at an account and it's past the 7 years, but you've never had any delinquencies. It's only going to be positively impacting your credit. Not a ton because it's an old account, but positive is good and it stays on for 10 years. As I had mentioned, the credit reports, you want to pull them from annualcreditreport.com. I dropped it in the chat. We'll drop it again, annualcreditreport.com. It's not a scam, as I had thought it was. It's the federally recognized place to pull your credit reports. And it's free through each week for all 3 credit bureaus through 2023. So going through this, you're going to put in your personal information. You'll answer some security questions. I recommend having them handy somewhere, or just having answers, or having a credit report handy so that you can answer those questions effectively. I know I got caught up in Equifax, and they would not give me access to my credit report because I happened to be answering one of the security questions wrong. And it took like a few years for me to figure it out. If you do have issues when you're answering these security questions, you have a method where you can fax in or email the credit bureau directly and let them know that you're not able to get past that point. This is a sticking point. They can often let you in. Me, they did not, but I ended up getting access eventually through trial and error. And then finally, you'll either have that credit report access or you'll be denied. So if you're denied, just know that you can go through and let them know that, hey, you have one of those security questions wrong. They pulled the security questions based off of the credit report. So it's imperative that you have all of the information correct on your credit report. Otherwise, you might get stuck in a loop like I did. Some things to remember, like I said, 1 free copy annually, except from the pandemic, we have through December 2023. You have the right, this is all through the FCRA, to be informed if you were denied a loan and receive a copy of your credit report. So if you are ever denied a loan or denied credit, ask that crediting agency to give you a copy of your credit report that they reviewed. You're able to dispute information that was furnished to the bureaus incorrectly. As I had mentioned before, you want to use the same information each time you open credit to make sure that, because that's going directly to those credit bureaus. And then finally, receive a new copy of your credit report if you dispute something successfully. So for example, my name was spelled wrong on one of the credit bureaus or the credit reports. I disputed it, and I could then receive another free copy of my credit report. Before, when you only were able to receive 1 free copy each year, this made sense that you should be able to receive that new copy to show that they corrected that error. But now through 2023, you can easily access it each week for free. I want to highlight here, so do you use credit websites to access? When we teach this, we talk about Credit Karma as a free place to check your credit score. Like I'd mentioned, annualcreditreport.com to access those free credit reports. But there are some other places that you can go. So CreditWise, Credit Sesame, there are a lot out there. Some things you might want to know, though, is know, 1, what you're signing up for, and if you have to place a credit card to open it. So I avoided Credit Karma like the plague for about 15 years, because when I was in college, when Credit Karma first came on the scene, you had to put a credit card before you could see your credit score. So I did, and then I was charged $15 a month, and I didn't catch it until I was like hundreds of dollars in. Now Credit Karma does not make you put in a credit card to see your credit score. So something to watch out for with these, if you just know that what you're signing up for and that you may or may not be charged in the future. Okay, any questions before we dive into credit scores? So we just covered credit reports.
Stephanie, I
Mhm.
just realized that the chat was disabled, but I got it fixed. So folks that are just joining us, you're welcome to place any of your questions in the chat box. And my apologies that it was disabled. We were putting things in there and they weren't getting seen, but I got that fixed. So we're good to go.
Nice. And if anyone has any questions after the presentation, I just dropped my email in the chat. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer. Though I am certified in many curricula. I'm not like a financial advisor, so take my knowledge as far as it can go, which is not a certified professional financial advisor. Okay, so credit scores, we talked about the credit report and knowing that the credit report is pulled to create your credit score. So what do credit scores look like? There are a wide range of different scores, and you might look at these scores and say, I'm in like the fair range. We talk about subprime, near prime, and prime or super prime. And as you see, like under 550 is kind of a red flag. You will most likely be denied credit altogether, or receive loans with very high interest rates, very predatory in nature. If you are able to get your credit score up to the 550 to 700 range, 650 range, you may be eligible for better rates and terms, but you may also still need a cosigner. And finally, what you're working toward is this 650, 700 plus range. You'll get very good rates and terms, and you'll be viewed by lenders as low risk. So we'll talk a little bit more about the scores. If you see yourself on the lower end of the spectrum, just know that time heals all wounds, and you can get back to that good range. It just takes time. But what if you don't have a score? So you might not have a score if you've never used credit cards or loans before. If you've only started using credit recently, so if you take out a credit card, you make your first payment, and then you pull your credit report, you might think, oh, my credit didn't show up. The credit card's not on my credit report. It takes a few months to get it going. It takes a few months to show up on the credit report because depending on when you had taken out that card and the date they report to the credit bureaus, they don't report right away. They usually collect all their credit and then send it on to the credit bureaus. So it just takes time. And then if you've had used credit in the past, but don't have any recent accounts or activity. So say you don't use credit cards regularly and you paid your mortgage off 15 years ago, then you most likely do not have a credit score or an active credit file. So no score. The good news is that there's only one way to go, and that's up. The bad news is if you do try to take out credit, you might be a higher risk. So how are you treated? Here, we're looking at different types. Like I had said, there are hundreds of different scoring models, and they assess at different rates what type of credit risk that you are. And it's all varies on the type of credit you're accessing. So let's dig in. We've got 15 minutes left, so it's gonna be fast and furious through the next few slides. Some key scoring factors. I already stated this, but payment history is going to be that top one. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. Here, you want to make a strong credit a strong credit profile will show that you've made all your payments on time. You'll get back quickly after missing a payment. So if it's only been one missed payment, just showing that you recovered and were able to make payments on time after that. And you use your accounts regularly. So that's how this is a ideal situation for payment history. For strong credit profile, outstanding debt or credit utilization, as it's often called, you'll want to keep the credit card balances low. Like I said, now they're telling people 10% or less of your available credit. This is different for installment credit. So those car loans, auto loans, mortgages, so those one lump sum payments, student loans. This is just gonna be a revolving credit that they look at, and you want to keep it 10% or below. They were telling people 30%, but now the best practice is 10. So avoid maxing out any one credit card. So keeping the utilization on all a little bit low, 10 to 30% if you can. And no maxed out credit cards. Great question. I'm not sure when they changed from 30 to 10. It was definitely within the last 3 years that they've been saying that. They, as in the CFPB and CBA. So here we can see the balances here. Ruby is our example. She's got 2 credit cards of outstanding debt. She's got, or 3 credit cards, sorry. 1,000. She got 50% utilization on one. She's got about 50% on the second, and then she's got 0 on the last. So what's Ruby's credit utilization rate? We'd calculate this by totaling up all of her limits and then all of her balances. And it's about 30% of utilization rate. But you also get dinged for maxing out a credit card. Let's say she closes out that credit card. She was like, I'm not using it. The balance is low. I'm just going to cut it out, which 10 years ago, I actually did this. And when I was getting my mortgage, they were like, why did you do that? You just ruined but I didn't understand utilization rates. So here you're like, I'm not using it. I'm just going to close this account. So now she's got 51% because you total up the limit, you total up the balance, and it's balance over your credit limit equals what percentage? She's at 51%. And that's what I did with my credit cards. Next, your credit length of history. Here, you want to avoid closing out those old accounts if possible. So if you do have good credit history, you paid your account, you have a in good standing credit card, avoid closing out the card. Surprisingly, and I just checked it again, I have a credit card that I've had open for about 12 years, and my Chase journey says that I have a young credit profile. So I'm not quite sure what long credit history means, but for me, I guess it's longer than 12 years. So just if it's good and good standing, keep it active, keep it open, and avoid closing out good standing accounts. And like we said, time heals all. So be patient, and credit building takes time. Those delinquent accounts are going to fall off within 7 years. And only apply for credit when you need it. So a strong credit profile, you're not going to have like different inquiry, or you're not going to have a ton of inquiries. Yes, but just know that if you happen to be new, you need a new car, you need a new mortgage, you need a new loan for your farm equipment, that it's only going to affect you by about 10%. And then making sure that you have a robust credit profile. In practice, creditors want to see you take out revolving and see that you can handle an installment loan. But I advise people don't take out a loan for the sake of having a mix of credit. I was worried about this for a long time. I was like, I don't have we paid off my lemon of a car and I'm not, I don't have a revolving or an installment loan. I just have like 1 or 2 credit cards. It's okay. You're still going to have a great credit score. You don't have to take out that installment loan for the sake of taking out or for the sake of a credit mix. So in summary, the best practices are to keep it active, make those on-time payments, keep it low, and then keep it up. So you want 6 months of credit history in order to maintain activity on your credit report. So on here, just a sample of your credit report. You got that personal information, Social Security. Make sure all of these are accurate when you're looking at your credit report. Okay, we've got about 8 minutes left to get through the last bit of slides. So to build strong credit, they hammer it in over and over, but on-time payments. Make sure that it's reported to the credit bureau. Like we said, if you're making all of your bills and paying them on time and they're not reporting to the credit bureaus, then it's not going to affect your credit. Make sure you're paying them off every month, and this builds credit. So will it help me build credit? If you open a credit card or you have an open credit card, but it hasn't been used in the last year, will it build credit? No. You have to use your open credit card within 6 months in order for it to be an active trade line. So it'll still show up on your credit report. It's just not going to be building your credit. A car loan in good standing with a $2,000 balance. Yes. So this is an active trade line. You're actively paying it off. If it's in good standing, it will build credit. A car loan paid off last month. No, as I had mentioned before, any installment loans that are paid off incomplete, they're going to fall off your credit, or they're going to not be building credit. Sorry, it'll still be on your credit report for 10 years. If it was in good standing, 7 if you have a delinquency, but it'll not be building credit, positively impacting that credit score. A collection account that you're making payments on. No, as I mentioned before, also, collections are not actively building credit. It'll be on your credit report, but it'll be negatively or not impacting your credit positively. So strategies, you could get a secured credit card. So this is where you back it with money, but they also report to the credit bureau. So you might put on a deposit, like $500, you have a $500 credit limit. It kind of works as a collateralized loan. An unsecured credit card. So this is just a regular credit card that you have a set amount that you're able to borrow up to for a certain amount of time. And it can be used and paid off each month, can build credit. Credit builder loans. So if you go to a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, this will help you build your loans. Rent reporting for credit building. This is new. California requires it. Other states are starting to follow suit, but getting your landlords to report your to the credit bureaus can help you positively impact your credit. A social loan or lending circle, if they're reporting to the credit bureaus. Adding an authorized user to an account. So if you know someone who is really good with their credit and paying their bills on time, they can add you as an authorized user to help boost your credit. You can take out a personal loan and a student loan, but there are many more options to help build your credit. Those are just some strategies. So can I build credit without going into debt? Yes, you can. And here's how. So taking out that secured credit card. Here we have an example, Sophia, she has a credit score of 550, and after 6 months, she's able to increase it by 100 points. So it's on auto pay to pay the bill each month, and it's secured with the amount of money that she put against the credit card. So just zipping on through in the last few minutes. I know we're not going to get to dealing with the debt, but I encourage you to join us for our upcoming training and review the slides that were handed out with the presentation. So here you just want to make sure that you make those payments on time. Prepaying could reduce the overall cost. If you join us for credit as an asset, we talk about the cost of capital. And closed loans will no longer build credit. So just keep that in mind with installment credit. Revolving credit, if possible, pay the balance in full each month or keep those balances super low. If you paid off in full each month, you don't have to pay the interest. You don't get taxed with interest fees. Avoid paying the minimum. Like I had mentioned earlier, if you're only paying like 3%, it's not even you're going to just end up paying those interest fees, and maybe sometimes not even that, and they tack those fees onto the principal. So keep that credit open as long as possible, and always assess if you need credit. So I'll close with this: is understand your purpose. So why do I need credit? And do I understand the terms? We see with the auto sales, sometimes they bump up the terms to 7-year car loans. You're just over time going to end up paying more in interest and fees. Affordability, can I afford to take out the credit? Or how will this impact me or my financial stability? So looking at those monthly payments, looking overall how much you're going to be paying. Responsibility, are you prepared to be successful? And then finally, credit building readiness. How will a new loan impact your credit profile? So with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn to close us out.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for bearing with us and whizzing through that, everybody. So I'm going to put in the chat that, I'm sorry, wasn't working for a while there, our emails, as long, let's see, yep, there it is. Okay, along with our feedback form. So our feedback form will help us to develop more webinars that are useful to you all. And then we have our upcoming events link in there as well. We will be meeting with Stephanie again. Let me get the date and time here. We will be doing another webinar with her on March 16th from 12 to 1:30, or excuse me, from 12 to 1. It's the, let me pull it up here. Starting and maintaining your business credit. So that'll be happening on March 16th. If you register for this one, you'll also be registered for that one and receive the reminders as well. So this recording, along with the slides, will be placed on our website under the webinar recording link. So if you want to access it there to go through things, you're more than welcome to. It'll be available within a week. But in the meantime, our email addresses are in the chat, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us for any questions that you have between now and then. But thanks for your time, everyone. Have a good day, and we'll see you hopefully on the 16th.